Hello, and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel, brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. In this video 6 of the My First Socks with Marley Bird video series, you are going to learn how to work the toe of a sock. So far, you have learned how to do the cuff, the leg, the heel flap, the heel turn and the gusset, the foot of the sock, and all that is left is this really simple toe. The toe of the sock is really easy and it's going to go super fast. However, I do want to make sure that you work through the toe of the sock and the Kitchener stitch all in one fell swoop right here with me. So go ahead, go potty, grab yourself a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever it may be, and sit down and be ready to work through the entire toe of the sock right here in this video. I'll walk you through every step you need to know in order to complete that sock. Now, as far as the pattern we're working with, you can find a link to that in the video description box right down there below. And while you're down there, please smash that like button, as my kids say, because why not? Once you have the pattern in hand and all of your homework is complete, join me back here with your cup of coffee and we will get started on this toe. Just trust me, it's going to go super fast. I'm ready to go. Can you believe we're almost done with an entire sock? Those of you who've worked on 2 socks at the same time, can you believe you're almost done with a pair of socks? It must be very exciting out there. I know I'm excited on my end. I can't wait to walk you through this next step. Now, I do have my little bottle of water here ready to go, and I'm ready to walk through this entire step with you. So hopefully you are too. So let's get to it. You can see my homework complete right down here. I have done the foot of my sock, so that way the entire section of my sock down here is complete to the size that I need it to be. And I'm doing it a custom fit size. I didn't use one of the approximate sizes, but maybe you guys decided to do an approximate size and you're still not sure if it's really going to fit well. This is where I would absolutely add a lifeline before you start into the toe. Not just if you did the approximate sizing in the pattern, but maybe this is your very first sock and you want a point to be able to rip back to if something doesn't look right later on. It's a really good idea to add a lifeline at this point. Let me show you how to do that. The first thing you want to do is go ahead and just grab a length of yarn and apply it to a nice little yarn needle. Then all I will do is I am going to thread this needle through all of my stitches that are resting on my needle. I will make sure that I am not going to split any yarn. I am just literally going through each stitch on my needle. Okay? Threading it through all of them. I can go through some and then give it a pull and then start again. I will do this all the way around on each needle. What this will do is, as we continue working our sock pattern, all of those stitches will have that thread run through them. So if something happens later on and you need to rip out, those stitches won't go any further than where that thread is because that's holding them in place. You want to make sure you don't split the yarn as you're going around, and if you happen to have stitch markers or anything like that in place, you want to make sure you don't thread the lifeline through the stitch markers. Okay? Once you've thread your lifeline through the first needle, go ahead and just rotate your needles and then you'll thread it through the next needle as well. You'll do this literally all the way around and then it's just going to hang out there. It's not going to do anything else. You're simply just going to keep that yarn in place and not do anything else with it. It's only there as a security blanket, okay? So go ahead and add your lifeline all the way around. Once you've threaded the lifeline all the way through, go ahead and just give it a little knot. That's what I like to do, just so it doesn't go anywhere, just in case you accidentally were to snag it and give it a pull. You don't want to do that. So I'm just tying the knot to get it out of the way. And now that lifeline is just thread through all of the stitches and it's there just as a safety net. Do you have to add a lifeline every time as you're making socks? Absolutely not. But it's nice to do if you're making these for the very first time or if you're making them for somebody that you just aren't really sure if the foot that you've already knit up is long enough or if it's not long enough. It's just a nice little thing to have. All right, so now that we have the lifeline, we can jump in and work the toe of the sock. Let's go ahead and take a look at the sample sock we've been looking at all along. And the toe of this sock was completed working with the instructions that you have in hand. You'll see here that this is a series of decreases that are done every other row until we get a certain number of stitches on our needle, and then we work them every row. Very similar to what we did down here with the gusset, only this time, instead of only working our decreases at this point, we have to work it on this needle as well, okay? So one thing that you could do as you're following along with the pattern, notice this. Remember, we're working with this pattern as if it was a recipe. If you were working on a pair of socks, what you essentially want to do is you want to decrease at those corner spots of the toe, okay? So if this was, let's take it off of the sock blocker. As this is up like this, we want to decrease at this edge and this edge on both sides. So on the side that's on the bottom of our foot and the side that's at the top of our foot, we want to decrease every other round until we have half the number of stitches on our needles as we started. Let me repeat that. You will decrease at 4 spots, this spot, this spot, this spot, and this spot, until you have half the number of stitches you have on your needles by working the decreases every other round. So if you're following along with the pattern, if you had 48 stitches, you are now going to get down to 24. If you had 64 stitches, you're now going to get down to 32. Pretty easy, right? So the recipe part there is no matter what number your stitches, let me try that again. No matter what number of stitches you have, if you decrease every other round and get down to half the number of stitches, that's where you want to be before we change up the rate of decreases. All right, so this is what we're going to do. Following along with the pattern, I have my working yarn is in the position that it's at the bottom of my foot. And I'm going to work all the way up this needle to the last 3 stitches. Then I'll do a knit 2 together and a knit 1, just like we did when we did the gusset. As I'm knitting along here, I'm completely ignoring that lifeline. I'm not knitting into it. I'm not doing anything else. I'm simply ignoring it. Okay, I'm going to get up here to the last 3 stitches. I'm here, so I will knit 2 together. Oops, I dropped one off. Knit 2 together and then knit 1, just like we did on our gusset. Here's where the change is. When I rotate my needles, I now need to also decrease on the top of my foot. So I will be working a decrease right here. So I will knit 1 and I will work an SSK. So I slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, take my left hand needle, put it in the front leg of both of those stitches, and then knit them together. There's my decrease. Now I will knit to the end of this needle. I don't want to decrease at the center of my foot, right? This would be the center of the top of my foot if I did another decrease at this end, so I don't want to do that. So I just knit all the way down to the end of this needle, rotate. Now I'm working along this half of my sock, so I want to decrease here and I will want to decrease here. So I'll go down to the last 3 stitches on this needle and I'll do a knit 2 together and then a knit 1. And then when I rotate, I'll knit 1 and do an SSK. Here we go. Still working along, completely ignoring that lifeline, still pulling my stitches nice and snug so I don't get ladders. Just working all the way down here to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, and then knit 1. Rotate, knit 1, and then SSK. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit. Left hand needle goes in the front leg of both of those stitches, and then I knit them together. And then I'll knit all the way to the end of this needle, and that'll put me to the bottom of my foot. Now, just like when we were doing the gusset, if you decide you want to change this up and do an SSK to start and then a knit 2 together on the other side, you totally could. The point here is that we want to decrease these stitches. We are decreasing a round, and each round that we end up doing these decreases, we're getting rid of 4 total stitches, okay? So now that I'm at the bottom of my foot, I finished my round, right? This is the bottom of my foot. I have finished working all the way around. I need to work 1 round evenly. And what that means is I'm just going to knit all the way around. I'm not doing any other shaping. I'm just knitting. And what's cool here is because I just decreased 4 stitches, it's going to go a little bit faster. That's one thing that's really cool about working the toe of the sock is it goes really fast because you're decreasing stitches every other round, okay? Just continue on knitting all the way around, and remember, just pull those stitches nice and snug. And your lifeline is on the row below you, so it won't even be in your way anymore. You won't have to worry about it. Just let it hang out there. Once you get to the end of this round of knitting even, you would do another round of decreases, decreasing at the same points as you did before, using the same types of decreases you did before. You don't change it up. Once you've established what decreases you're going to use at those points, you want to make sure you continue to use those decreases. I'm ready to start my next round of decreases, and this time I want to show you what it looks like in case you happen to have to put your work away or get up and walk away and come back to your work to see where you are. I'm knitting down to the last 3 stitches here, and what I want to notice is what is going on with the second stitch. Does it look like that stitch right there below the one that's on my needle? Does it look like it's all by itself? Right there, or does it look like it's pulling together 2 stitches like the one down there? This one looks like it's all by itself, so that lets me know that my previous round was just a knit round. It wasn't a decrease round, so that means I'm currently on a decrease round. Once you work that decrease, so for this one, this would be my knit 2 together and then knit 1. Those stitches now look like, let's take a look. Can you see how it looks like 2 stitches are coming together right there? Like there's the stitch, there's one of them. Here was the second one right there. But see how they look like there's 2 together? So on my next round, if I came up to my last 3 stitches, I could take a look at this one and be like, oh, those 2 stitches look like they were knit together. So that must have been a decrease round, meaning I'm on a non-decrease round. Does that help a little bit? I want to make sure you know how to read your knitting so that way if you have to put it away, you know what you're looking for. It's even easier on the rounds where you're looking at the SSK because the SSK has that really nice slant right there. So if that slant is not directly underneath your needle, you know that you're on a decrease round. So there's my decrease round there. This was a regular round, and now I'm on another decrease round. So I slip a zip to knit, slip a zip to knit, knit those 2 together, and see how that creates that really cool slant? So that slant makes it really recognizable for me to see that that was a decrease round. And I'll know where I am in my work once I find that stitch. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an extra tip of what to do if you have to put your work down as you're working through the toe. But preferably when you get to this Preferably when you get to this part of your sock, you want to try and bust through the entire toe section all at once. It just makes it easier. And here I am, I'm down, I'm at the corner. I always make sure I'm on the side here because my very first socks I ever made, I accidentally started decreasing down the top of my sock because I lost my place. So I always try and check and make sure I'm at the side of my sock whenever I do my decreases. You know, it's the little things, it's the little mistakes that you make along the way that help you learn and make you a better knitter or crocheter, right? So don't think that you're the only one out there making mistakes. I promise, I make mistakes all the time. True story, I said this in the Facebook group. I will lose count all the time on if I'm on a decrease row or a non-decrease row when I'm working on the gusset, and I'll fudge it. I'll either put 2 decreases in a row, or I will wait to do an extra decrease at the very end. Like I'll make it so it works out ultimately, but I don't fret it. I don't worry about having 1 extra stitch or 1 stitch too few as I'm working around. You know, I just make it work because honestly, you're working with such small stitches in a little tiny segment on your foot, something that most people are not even going to look that closely at. It's not something I worry too much about, especially if it's just a plain stockinette sock. If I'm working with a stitch pattern, then of course that makes a little bit of a difference because I'm dealing with an actual stitch pattern. But when I'm working with just plain stockinette, I don't stress about it too much. However, here at the toe, it is really nice if you can keep everything really great and consistent and make sure that you are doing these decreases every other round until you get to half the number of stitches on your needles. I think I'm just going to keep on working round and round until I get down to where I have 6 stitches on each needle, okay? Once you have half the number of stitches on your needle, join me back here and we'll move on to the next step. Once you've reached half the number of stitches that you started with, you want to make sure you do complete another round 2, which is just knitting. Okay, you don't want to end on your decrease round. You do want to finish a full knit round. So that's what I am working on right here. Hopefully you had no trouble working through this section. I could say this section right here took me about 17 minutes. So hopefully you're working about the same amount of time. It goes really fast, right? Because you're decreasing those stitches every other round. So it begins to really take off and go really quickly. The next part of the toe is going to go equally as quick because this next section actually has you do decreases every round. And the reason it has you do that is it wants you to get a rapid decrease. So it doesn't want you to add a bunch more length to the toe of your sock. We just want to get down to some rapid decreases to really pull in the top of the sock right at the tip of your toe to kind of come in before we do the Kitchener. Now, having said that, if you want to customize this sock a little bit, and maybe you're like, you know what? I don't want to rip back to where my lifeline is. I really feel like if I just do a couple more rounds of decreasing every other round to get some length, you absolutely could do that. I mean, Lord knows our toes are not all created equally, right? Sometimes you have really long toes and you need that extra length. You could absolutely do that. But as far as the pattern is written, at this point, you are now going to take your stitches and you will decrease at those same points every other round until you get half the number of stitches again. So for this one, that means I'm at the bottom of my foot. I'm going to work up to the last 3 stitches here, and I did finish on a round 2, so this is just a knit round that I had, and I will go ahead, work up to these 3 stitches, and work my decrease. And then knit 1, and then rotate. And I'll do this all the way around, but then the following round, I'll do it again. And because I have 6 stitches on each needle, I will get down to where I have 3 stitches on each needle. Go ahead, do the same on your work as well, decreasing at those same points, but decrease every round this time until you have half the number of stitches on your needles. The exact number is written in your pattern if you want to follow along exactly with that. And that is my last stitch. That went really fast, didn't it? This one is really quick because you're decreasing every round, and so it goes really quickly. At this point, if I put down my work, you can see this is the top of my foot. I have this nice shaping going on, and right here at the final couple rounds where I did decrease every round, it's really starting to pull it in right there. But this is where I get that really great length working the decreases every other round. If I flip this over, it's the same thing on this side. By this point, you'll be able to try on your sock, and hopefully it is covering your entire foot and all of your toes right up to the tippy top. Your toes should not be sticking out too much past them at this point. If they are, then your socks are too short. If the toe of your sock is going over your toes too much by this point, then your socks are too long. So this is where you could decide to rip back to your lifeline and either add length to the foot of your sock or decrease length to the foot of your sock. You see how that lifeline comes into play? If you've put on your sock and everything looks great and it's literally just the tips of your little toes are just showing your big toe, it's ready to graft the top of the sock. By grafting the top of the sock together, we're going to make it look virtually seamless. It's time to learn how to do the Kitchener stitch. The Kitchener stitch is one of those stitches that's invaluable to a knitter's toolbox. It's often used on the toe of socks or in the underarm area of sweaters. It's really not that difficult. It's just a process of using your yarn and tapestry needle to simulate the knit stitch by sewing the 2 pieces of stockinette together. Let me show you how to use the Kitchener stitch for a sock. On our sock pattern, we have finished our work off down here at the bottom of our sock. So the first thing we want to do is get our thread up here to the corner. So what we will do is simply knit these stitches all the way up so that our yarn is up here at the side of the sock. Can you see that? It's now over here at the side. Now what you want to do is go ahead and place the stitches that are on the foot of the sock onto one needle. So I will simply use this needle here. This was my needle 4. And I'm just going to slip my needle 1 stitches over onto my needle 4. Get rid of that. Now I'll go ahead and turn my work over. So I'm looking at the top of my sock now. And I want to make sure that I'm slipping these stitches over as well. So this is my needle 2, and I will just slip my stitches from needle 3 onto my needle 2. To start the Kitchener stitch, you want to make sure that you have the same number of stitches on the back needle as you have on the front needle. You also want to make sure that your working yarn is coming from the needle that's in back. So for this particular sock, we have the yarn coming from the foot of the sock, right back there, and this is the top of the sock facing us. We want to cut a length of yarn that is long enough to sew all of these stitches together. One thing you could do is you could take the yarn and you could wrap it around all those live stitches 3 times. And then the amount you have after you've wrapped it 3 times, give yourself a little bit extra and snip your yarn right there. That should be enough yarn to get you through all of the stitches, plus enough to weave in your tail at the end. Now we have this length of yarn we will thread onto a tapestry needle. I'll go ahead and grab my tapestry needle. And I'm just going to take my yarn and thread it directly into the needle. Now that your yarn is threaded through the tapestry needle, it's time to simulate the knit stitch by using the Kitchener stitch. Most Kitchener stitch patterns have you start off with a setup row. So what you will do is going into the yarn that is in the needle closest to you, you will go in as if to purl and leave that work on your needle. Now you want to go into the stitch that's in back and you want to go in as if to knit and leave that work on your needle. You'll notice I'm bringing my yarn underneath the needles each time. That is a setup row. Doing the setup row is not absolutely necessary, but it is written that way in most Kitchener stitch instructions. So that's why I'm choosing to show you how to do it here. Once you're past the setup row, my yarn is still coming off of my needle and back, and it's time to start the repeat. The repeat for this is, you go to the front needle, you go into this first stitch as if to knit, and that stitch comes off. So in, and that stitch comes off. Then you go into the next stitch as if to purl, and that stitch stays on. You pull the thread through. I come to the back needle. I will go into that stitch as if to purl, and it comes off. Okay, now I go into the back stitch and I go in as if to knit, and that stays on. I do want to make sure my yarn stays between my needles, right? Nothing gets overlapping my needles at all. You just give that a good pull. Okay, there's the repeat. I'm going to go in as if to knit and it comes off, go in as if to purl and it stays on. Go in as if to purl and it comes off, go in as if to knit and it stays on. Bring the yarn between the needles underneath them, okay? Coming back to the front, I go in as if to knit and it comes off, go in as if to purl and it stays on. I'm going to make sure this one is all the way on there. I'll go in as if to purl and it comes off, go in as if to knit and it stays on. Go in as if to knit and it comes off, go in as if to purl and it stays on. Go in as if to purl, comes off, go in as if to knit and it stays on. Go in as if to knit and it comes off, go in as if to purl and it stays on. Go in as if to purl and it comes off, go in as if to knit and it stays on. We're left with 2 stitches on the needle, so we only have 2 more steps to complete for a regular Kitchener stitch. For this one, we would just go knit and take it off, and purl and take it off. Give this a good pull through, and you have a toe of the sock. Once the toe of the sock is complete, go ahead and put your hand in the sock itself. Then you'll thread the tapestry needle through these stitches so that way you can get rid of the final 2 stitches that were kind of poking out there a little bit. I just pull it through just like so, give it a good pull, and there is the top of my sock. You can see it's nice and finished. Once you've pulled that thread through, you simply weave in your tail on the inside. I like to go ahead and weave my tail through the side of my toe, so that way the yarn itself is out of the path of where my foot is going to rest in the sock. By weaving my yarn through this area, I just kind of secure it in place and it just stays nice and tucked in. I can go ahead and give it a good snip, just like so. Once you have woven in your tail, you can turn your sock right side out. You can take a look at your beautiful handiwork of the Kitchener stitch, and your sock is complete. Oh my gosh, we have finished a sock, you guys. This is complete. You can go ahead, if you didn't use your Lifeline, go ahead and snip that yarn and just give it a pull. You can just pull it through. It should be able to pull right on out. It'll look like just like new right there in your sock. Oh my gosh. This is so exciting. I know that you're out there finishing your sock and you're just as excited. With your tail up here, your beginning tail, you can go ahead and weave that in at this point. I'll show you how I do mine so that way you can see what I do here. But I just thread it onto my tapestry needle, and working on the inside of my work here, I will thread that yarn and I will typically just work down the series of what look like knit stitches on the inside. And I will just thread literally through the stitches. Okay, I'm like splitting the yarn through the stitches, coming down a little ways. Give it a nice little pull. And then I will split the yarn going up the other side. And the reason I'm going down the knits is because the opposite side it looks like pearls. So this is just really truly just hidden. And give it a good pull. And so it's hidden over here. This is nice and secure. I could go down one more time if you want to, just to make sure, but it's not going to cause any sort of restriction with the stretch of the top of the sock at all, and it's going to be nice and secure. And if you're using this yarn, the Marley Bird Chic Sheep yarn, it will just secure itself nicely right down in there. I'm going to give that a pull right there. Go ahead and snip that off. There is the top of my sock, all nice and complete. And check it out, you guys. I have a sock. I have a sock. I have a sock. I have a sock. Look how cute this is. I have an adorable sock. Let's put it in this sock blocker. Do you need sock blockers? Some of you have asked. Absolutely not. You don't need sock blockers. I love them because I think they present your sock really well. And I get mine from a company called Perfectly Catchy Designs on eBay. They're handcrafted and they're beautiful, and you can get all sorts of different like cutouts up here. I love them. I know the owners personally and they're fantastic. So you don't need them, but man, does that display your sock so well or what? I mean, come on. That is gorgeous. We have a completed sock here, you guys. Isn't this adorable? It's just so cute. I'm literally like at a loss for words. I can't believe we worked through this 6-week process of making these awesome socks, and all of you out there, I know that you are just getting as excited as I am the fact that your sock is complete. Don't forget you have one more to do, so make sure you do your second sock if you haven't started it, or just complete the toe of your second sock if you have started it. And I can't wait to see your progress. Make sure you share with me on social media, #MarleyBird. I am the Marley Bird on Instagram. I'll make sure I put a link right down there so you can see where you can find me on Instagram. But this has been so much fun. Making all of these socks with you guys has literally just been a thrill. If you want to have any of these other sock patterns, whether it's the stripes or the garters, not the garter stitch, the ribbing here, they're available on marleybird.com. And I have had the best time making this sock with you. Hopefully you have too. And you you really look at this as a learning experience. You now know how to do an actual sock. You understand the construction, and you can take the information that you have learned here and really expand out to make all sorts of other socks. You could use actual sock yarn. You could use bigger yarn and bigger needles and make really big slippery socks. There's all sorts of suggestions out there for you. You'll notice in the pattern on marleybird.com, I did put a link to some must-have books that I highly recommend to those of you out there who are completely smitten by socks and want to start bulking up your personal library of wonderful sock books to really help you customize socks. There's 4 wonderful books out there that I highly recommend, and I have added the link to those in the pattern on marleybird.com, so make sure you check that out. Again, that URL is in the video description box right down there below, so make sure you go down there and get it. But other than that, congratulations! You have completed the My First Socks with Marley Bird. Hopefully you love your socks as much as I love mine, and I can't wait to see yours. This has been a wonderful 6-week sock class with you, and I hope you will join me again over here for the next knit along, or hey, if you're a crocheter, come join me at the crochet along this fall. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, and I am so proud of you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Everything you need to know about knitting or crochet can be found right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Learn with Marley Bird. Visit youtube.com/Marley Bird.